Hi, Year 11. Welcome to your recorded lecture on hawk roosting. This is Miss Gordon.
And
Gordon. I'm going to keep going. It's
yeah,
Gordon. I'm not
and
starting again.
exactly. And Miss Devaros.
We're going to start off by reading the poem to you. And I'm going to let Miss Tavares read it because obviously I can't speak. Off you go, Miss.
Okay, Miss is going to accompany my reading with some lovely images of birds, specifically hawks. So, hawk roosting. I sit in the top of the wood, my eyes closed, in action, no falsifying dream, between my hooked head and hooked feet, or in sleep rehearsed perfect kills and eats. The convenience of the high trees, the air's buoyancy, and the sun's rays are of advantage to me. And I just had a cupcake, guys. I had too much sugar. And the earth space upward for my inspection. My feet are locked upon the rough bark. It took the whole of creation to produce my foot, my each feather. Now I hold creation in my foot. Or fly up and revolve it all slowly. I kill where I please because it is all mine. There is no sophistry in my body. My manners are tearing off heads, the allotment of death. For the one path of my flight is direct, through the bones of the living. No arguments assert my right. The sun is behind me. Nothing has changed since I began. My eye has permitted no change. I am going to keep things like this.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed my bird pictures. Okay, so this slide, if you're in my class, you'll just understand this straight away. If not, here's my trigger warning. This is a clip from the nature documentary called Hostile Planet. Now, the reason I've included it is because I just think it perfectly captures what Ted Hughes is trying to convey in this poem about nature being cruel. So I will upload this PowerPoint for you, and you can watch the link. But let me just, give you the warning now, and I accept no blame for any fluffy baby birds being harmed. I'm sorry, they were harmed in the making
Spoiler
of
alert.
this. So, what is this poem about? It is the one about a hawk. So, a hawk is given the power of speech. So, this poem is told using the first person narrative and given the hawk human-like qualities, giving him the ability to speak and to think, allowing the reader to imagine what it's like to inhabit the instincts, attitudes, and behaviors of such a creature. The hawk has an air of authority, looking down on the world from its high vantage point, that sitting at the top of the wood in the trees and feeling like everything belongs to it. The poem is particularly keen to stress the way that violence, in the hawk's world at least, is not some kind of moral wrong, but a part of nature.
And he reinforces that. If you look in the one, two, three, fourth stanza, he says there is no sophistry. So sophistry refers to a sort of logic, and what Hughes is very, very clear about is you can't apply our human logic, our human morals, if you like, to the natural world. The natural world is um, quite ruthless, can be quite ruthless, and so it's very clear that it's just part of the hawk's nature here.
So,
Oh, sorry.
yeah,
So
no, you're
okay,
fine.
so is this? We have not rehearsed. Is this a poem about fascism? So Ted Hughes has said this: the poem of mine usually cited for violence is hawk roosting. This drowsy hawk sitting in a wood and talking to itself. The bird is accused of being a fascist, the symbol of some horrible genocidal dictator. Actually, what I had in mind was that in this hawk, nature was thinking, simply nature. So what Ted Hughes is saying is, as we said before, this poem is meant to just convey the characteristics of nature, how ruthless it can be,
The
how
brutality of
the
nature.
brutality, how everything is unexpected. It's not purposeful. It's not meant in a spiteful, malicious way. Nature is all about survival of the fittest, and sometimes that can be ruthless. Having said that, it's interesting that, and it's okay if you want to talk about this in your essays. It's interesting that people would assume that it is a dictator, that it's almost an extended metaphor for a dictator. Because when you think about someone who's a fascist, famous examples, Hitler, for example, you do think egotistic, you do think arrogant, you do think controlling, you do think ruthless, you may even think killer. And there's so many quotations to support that when he says, um, it took the whole of creation to produce my foot. Now I hold creation in my hand, almost challenging the creator, that sense of self-righteousness. When he says my manners are tearing off head, I'm going to keep things like this. Dictators often come to power and ensure their party and themselves
Mm.
actually stay in power. So
He,
yeah.
he also quite purposely used the image of the hawk. Now, him, I think he's from Yorkshire, and he used to like just go out and bird watch essentially and watch the hawks near his house. But Also, the hawk was part of the Nazi symbol, so it is associated with fascism in that respect. And also, if you look at bald eagle, is the bird associated on the American flag. So these are birds of prey, birds of power. So it is quite natural for people to associate this with dictators, and it's absolutely fine if you want to um, talk about this and discuss this interpretation in your own work.
Um, so critical interpretations, we can see that it says here some critics see in the ruthless behaviour of Hawke, for instance, a despot or dictator, a figure that cares only about power and a symbol of the fascist. So as we said before, it's very easy to come to that conclusion, but you can also just write about the fact it is representing nature, and as we said, the ruthlessness of nature, the fact that even within nature there's a sense of hierarchy. The hawk perhaps is at the top as a predator. Okay, so you are able to talk about that, and again. Hughes is getting into the mind. He is taking on the persona. He's adopting the characteristic of the hawk. He is showing us how this bird thinks. And one thing, as I said before, we're meant to take from this is that it's not meant to be something we apply our morals to of what's right and what's wrong. It just is. It's an existence. It's a state of being.
And he uses that form of a monologue. So this is where you can hit these assessment objectives and analyze language, structure, form. It's very purposefully done here in Hawk Roosting. So you should be talking about the fact that it is a monologue, and you should be talking about the fact that he uses those personal pronouns. I sit in the top of the wood.
And it's sorry, one more thing I noticed. It says the arrogant godlike thought. As Miss and I were talking about yesterday, one of the poems what comes this you might want to compare this with Ozymandias. And in Ozymandias, he says, look upon ye mighty and weep. And here again he references creation. Both of them challenge the creator, they challenge a higher force. So it links back to that idea of hierarchy. They challenge someone being, a high force like God, a higher being, a more powerful being than them, to highlight how they are powerful and how they have the control. So that's quite interesting there.
So we've already talked about two key themes here in the poem. We've talked about power, and we've talked about violence
And nature.
and nature. Three key themes. Look at that, getting them all in one. So you could look at different symbolisms of the hawk. Symbolism.
We're just gonna run with it, guys.
We're very tired. It's the end of the
You
school
have
day,
Google.
guys. I actually just had double year 11, so you've exhausted me. So look at this tentative language which we're using here in this slide, using possibly, perhaps, absolutely great to give lots of different interpretations and make your own, what you think, your own personal interpretation of the poem. But I would highly recommend using that tentative language and not saying definitively it is one thing or the other. So perhaps the hawk represents human beings and their cruel treatment of animals. The message is about our exploitation of nature. Well, I'm not going to go through them all now because you can read them here on the slide, but I do want to finish with this one in purple. Or the hawk is just a hawk. And this links into how us English teachers, we always overanalyze everything.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it is just what it says it is on the tin. So the hawk is just a hawk. The poem simply gives us insight into the thoughts and feelings of a bird of prey.
So if you guys got a question on how is nature presented, you can literally say nature is presented, and then just talk about
As cruel,
as
ruthless,
cruel, ruthless.
violent.
Talk about the characteristics of the hawk, all the things that Miss Gordon and I find so interesting. It's why we both love Macbeth.
Yeah, got a little bit of violence in literature. So there we have our key themes, as we said earlier: nature, violence, and power. Always link those in your topic sentence. When you get a question in the exam, a single poem analysis will sound something like, "How does Ted Hughes present?" And they will pick one of these themes. So, for example, how does Ted Hughes present violence in his poem Hawk Roosting? So you would have to make sure you're linking your points and your topic sentences to the question and to the theme. Now, no matter which theme you get in the question, you're going to talk about them all because they naturally complement each other in the poem, and you can't help but talk about each theme as you analyze the poem.
So we've got sort of an example here for you to read through and think about why it's a positive paragraph. So I'll begin reading that. We've got the overview to begin with. Hawk Roosting is a poem that creates a special tension between the natural world and the human world, one that Ted Hughes explored a great deal in his animal poems. That is an overview. It's literally introducing us to what is this poem about. We've got the name of the poet, we've got the name of the poem. It's very concise. You can see it's not lines for days, guys. It's really, really concise. So try to emulate that.
Yeah, and I think the key, what you said, it's an overview. It's not an introduction for a 15-mark analysis. You just need to give your overview.
Ted Hughes imagines the interior thoughts of one of the great birds of prey, the hawk. The poem is told entirely from the perspective of the hawk, which is personified as having the powers of conscious thought through the use of personal pronouns I and my to open the poem. The bird is speaking to itself like a human describing violent scenes, claiming domination. Top of the wood symbolizing its place at the top of the ecosystem. What the hawk lacks, however, are human qualities like mercy and remorse. Perfect kills and eat. It is ruthless and direct in its thoughts about hunting prey, though this violence is presented matter of factly as simply part of who the hawk is. This means that the reader has to wrestle with ideas that go beyond the animal kingdom and into the realm of the human and associated psychological and political issues. So you can see this person, they have that clear sort of topic sentence, like Miss was saying, that clear point. They embed short quotations. I know a lot of you are worried about how do I learn so many quotations. There's I and my, they're one word. You know, it's not that deep, guys.
Yeah.
You embed those through.
Be
And
smart with your quotations, which
yeah,
you're picking.
always
as well.
pick. Got this from Mr. Walt. Thanks, Mr. Walt. Shout out. Sponge. I think he said it. It was sponge quotations. So pick things
Yeah,
that you can
yeah.
use. It was him. Good.
It was, yeah, yeah.
Pick things that you can use for multiple.
It's either a rock or a sponge.
Yeah, exactly. Don't pick rocks. Rocks means you can't say much about it. You can't link it to many themes or many ideas. Sponge quotations, you can squeeze a lot out. There's a lot of analysis there. And I'm not sure if I said this before, but just to reiterate this, there's a lot of tentative language. This it could suggest, it may imply, perhaps it's possible. You don't, the point of saying that is you're saying to the examiner, hi, I can see things from different perspectives. Drop your flag. So this is me about to analyze. This is me offering a different perspective, okay?
And as an examiner looking through this, well, immediately you can award the student marks for AO1. So that's answering the question which has been asked. And there's AO1 reference. They have got their quotations in. There's also structural analysis, which is interweaved with language. So they're looking at how the poem has been opened, looking at that opening line. They're combining that with the form analysis. It's told entirely from the perspective of a hawk, and combining that with language analysis.
Violence, the poem suggests, is just as much as part of nature as is beauty, and the natural world isn't subject to human notions of morality. I kill where I please. The repetition of the verb kills implies that this is the hawk's instinctive action, and human guidelines or morals do not apply to him. For the hawk, to kill means to survive, it is a means to kill. The hawk knows this and comments on the way that nature seems to be perfectly designed to facilitate the hawk's hunting. Nature is of advantage to me. It says and describes itself as the product of the whole of creation. The proper noun creation refers to both nature and the entirety of existence, whilst also alluding to a religious worldview. This religious element is relevant to the poem because much of human morality is based on or informed by religion and vice versa. The mention of creation speaks to the hawk's prowess, but also to the incredible way that nature evolves to create the conditions for its creatures to flourish, even those same creatures are essentially killing machines. And it's interesting because often as humans, even though we think we have a higher order thinking, and we do think
Some
that
of us.
some of us, yeah. And we also have a sense of morality. A lot of the times we use a really sort of twisted version of morality to justify a lot of the horrible things that happened in history. Whereas what Hughes is almost showing here is, yes, this hawk does horrible things, but it is just for survival. It's not meant maliciously. He doesn't try to this hawk says it proudly. He's not trying to justify it. He says, yes, I kill. He says, yes, it is through the bones of the living. Yes, I tear off heads. And yes, I'm going to keep things like this. This is nature. This is the natural world.
So what? Come at
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, literally, come at me. This understanding that killing and violence are an integral part of nature informs the hawk's attitudes and personality. It rejects human understanding and morality, claiming that it has no need for falsifying dreams or sophistry. The noun sophistry is the use of clever but false arguments, which the hawk, acting in accordance with its true nature, has no need for. As such, humans are wrong to project their moral frameworks, especially the equation of violence with evil, onto the natural world. Nature, insists the hawk even, is governed by its own laws.
So what's really good about this analysis is you've seen the last slide there. It looked at the opening of the poem. Now it's tracking through. So it's making sure it's having coverage of the middle of the poem here. Also, again, linking back to the theme, the focus on the question, whilst tying that in with their language analysis and thoroughly explaining it, linking it to context. Um, Context being like of the natural world, this understanding of nature and how Hughes felt about it. So there is no more to this analysis, but we have a task for you now to look at the last stanza of the poem and to finish off this analysis by writing your own. Make sure you're looking at the closing of the poem, you're linking back to the topic sentences, and trying to keep your analysis and your academic language to the standard that's being written here. And this would be really, really good practice for you.
So possible comparisons, we call them the power duo, hawk roasting. We're done, guys. We're fine. We're done.
Like roast bird. I guess I'm having chicken for dinner.
Literally. Well.
Chicken or hawk.
Yes, teachers eat chicken. Hawk roosting and Ozymandias. So both poems discuss power and nature, or versus nature. They both explore the concept of time being more powerful and power fleeting. They both, as we said before, could be representative dictators of people, of what corruption does with corruption. This is what happens. Human beings are corrupted, perhaps, when they become powerful. So in that interpretation, this is simply an extended metaphor. And they both look at the cruelty of nature. So there's quite a few points there that you can compare them on. And remember, when you go to write, it's important you change each of your topic sentences. It has to be on a different idea.
That's really important. When you're comparing the poems, you shouldn't be looking to say, oh, they both use metaphors, or they both use repetition. You are comparing points of the poem. So both poems are about power. However, Ozymandias explores a specific dictator, Ramesses II, whereas Hawk Roosting is exploring the power of nature. So you're always looking to link that to theme, link it to your points you're making. Don't just be looking for similar images or similar techniques. We're not about technique spotting. We're about comparing the points of the poem, please. I think that's it.
We're finished, guys.
Yeah,
we are literally finished. We're done.
Enjoy.
Tune in next time for Teaching FM, where we discuss.
What is it? Swipe up and subscribe or like?
Subscribe. Yeah.
Oh, I don't even know. All right. Bye, guys.